This video is sponsored by the all-in-one website and business management software, Odoo. Use my link in the description to create a professional website in minutes for free. Imagine a ball hanging from a large number of thin cotton strings. The ball is 1,000 pounds. Each individual string can only hold approximately 5 to 10 pounds without breaking. But with around 200 strings attached, the ball is held up. Now imagine, one by one, the strings begin to get cut. After the first string is cut, nothing happens. After the second, the third, the 10th, the 20th, still nothing happens. But as the number of total strings reduces, the likelihood that the next cut string will cause everything to fall increases. Eventually, if no more strings are added, one string will be the final string, when the weight will no longer be withstandable, and all the other strings will begin to snap, the whole system collapsing. Though it will appear to be this one string, one cut, one act, that is the cause of everything falling, of course, each prior cut string will have been equally relevant. We will simply only know how close we were, how much damage we had caused, after that last string is cut. For many of us, this is what today's world can often feel like. Humanity constantly and fervently cutting and adding strings to hold up a very heavy world, each of us watching, fretting, and hoping that everything will sustain, that no one will cut that last string. Of course, this is not an entirely unique or new feeling. Throughout all of history, people have worried about the state of things, fearing and predicting the end of everything, at least on some level. Fears of doomsdays, the wraths of gods, cosmic order and disorder, and so on, have all owned a significant amount of real estate in the province of human history. But, arguably, things feel different now. The world feels weirder. That once paranoia we attached to myths and gods now feels like it has a real, justifiable object to attach to: the human project. In truth, things feel weird and different now because things are weird and different now. Of course, change is the only constant in history, but the rate and weirdness of change is not. Current humans are experiencing a degree of change in their individual lifetimes that the vast majority of humans haven't experienced across generations. Just over the last 30 or 40 years, an individual has experienced life without the existence of the internet, in a condition of society where faith in religions, institutions, and traditions was still prominent, to a world inundated by the internet, and then smartphones and smart devices, to a world coordinated by algorithms instead of human intention, where content, trends, and events pop up and disappear like bubbles in a whirlpool, to a world swarmed by bots and AI, where fake things seem real and real things seem fake, to a world where faith in institutions, religions, and traditional orientations is approaching the minority, to a world where, who knows? These are just some of the major differences in the conditions of society, work, technology, relationships, and life itself that have and do occur across decades or less now. Our childhoods are now not only distant from us in time, but in reality. Phases are not merely different chapters in our lives, but different chapters in different books. Naturally, this can create a high level of unease and disorientation. And naturally, this unease and disorientation can lead to high levels of cynicism and despair. The political scientist, Brian Klaas, describes humanity's current condition as an inversion of stability dynamics, where, as a species, we've gone from the historical dynamic of local instability and global stability to local stability and global instability. In other words, we've gone from daily life being largely unpredictable and precarious, while global conditions, or large-scale and temporal conditions, remained relatively consistent, to precisely the opposite, where now, daily life for most people is generally consistent and safe, but global conditions, political, economic, environmental, and technological, are highly volatile and unpredictable. Klaas writes, "The past was largely defined by local instability. Day-to-day life was unpredictable. One day you could be healthy, the next day you could be dead, struck down by a mysterious plague. Childbirth was a death trap. Starvation was a constant threat, as crops might inexplicably fail, or animals that were once abundant were suddenly nowhere to be found. But our distant ancestors also experienced global stability. That didn't mean that the world never changed, but rather that, broadly speaking, society ticked along more or less in similar ways from one generation to the next. If your parents were agrarian peasants, you were likely to be an agrarian peasant." Think back to when you were younger, and you just started to properly comprehend the phenomenon of the future. Like most people, you likely began to imagine and predict things that the future might hold. Who you would be, what you would do, what the world will be like. By a certain age, we likely felt as though, if we squinted hard enough, we could almost see 5, 10, 20 years or more out into the horizon of the future. As we've continued to get older, this sort of impulse to stand on the edge of the present and look out, trying to imagine, predict, and control the future, continues for most of us. But now, no matter how hard we seem to squint, it can seem like there is almost nothing to see. There's too much instability and uncertainty to see anything other than instability and uncertainty. But in all honesty, when we first began making our predictions about what the future might be like, how accurate were we then? How accurate has anyone ever been, across individual lives and across history? We are terrible psychics, but we are good mechanics. The future has always been unknowable and unpredictable. The world has always been chaotic and gruesome. We have always had to fashion everything out of nothing and fix all the inevitable broken and faulty parts. We simply know and feel just how unpredictable and chaotic the world is, as it now sits in the palm of our hands and flashes across our retinas 24/7. Now we know and feel just how much work there is to be done. The irony is, during a time when the conditions of the world and future are most unclear, when change is most rapid and hard to predict, so many of us are so sure of our pessimism and cynicism. So many of us are so sure the world is inevitably and irredeemably going the wrong direction. Of course, this is not to reduce or scoff at just how powerful and potentially destructive we are now compared to other times in history. Nuclear weapons, humanity's effects on the climate and environment, massive inequality, the pervasive hypnotizing nature of social media, biological access and manipulation, AI and other technological powers, and so on, are all new, very legitimate concerns. But this is to suggest that we are not and cannot be sure where any of this goes. We are, as a species, teenagers at best, destructive, ignorant, weird, and self-aggrandizing. But, as teenagers, if we survive our recklessness and make the right decisions, we are on course for adulthood, for wisdom and maturity, if we make the right decisions. The future isn't some abstract sci-fi concept. It is a real place, but it isn't a defined place, and it isn't a guaranteed place. We form and preserve it in every moment, with all our decisions and habits, both individually and collectively. In the words of the American anthropologist David Graeber, the ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we make, and could just as easily make differently. As individuals and as a species, we are always forming new habits and ceasing old ones. Though it often doesn't seem like it, in many ways, we are growing wiser. What better sign of this collective wisdom could there be than the increasing self-loathing over our ignorance? Currently, we are the freest, most educated, healthiest, and wealthiest we have ever been as a species. Only 200 years ago, only 12% of the global population could read and write. Today, nearly 90% of the world can, with a global population that has also grown 8-fold since then. Global life expectancy 200 years ago was roughly 30 years. Today, it is in the 70s. 200 years ago, there were essentially no democracies, in the modern sense. Today, nearly half the world is run via some form of liberal or electoral democracy. Never has there been less life-threatening diseases and less human-on-human violence. Of course, there are many, many other problems, both new and old, that still need serious attention. But there is no good, clear reason to assume that, if everything continues mostly on course, things won't continue in an upright direction. The problem with all of this, returning to that original feeling of witnessing the weighted ball of earth suspended by thin cotton strings, of which humanity seems to increasingly and fervently cut to use as material, is that no matter what happens in the long run, no matter how good things are in certain areas now compared to in the past, we don't live in the long run. We don't live in the past, and we don't live in the data and lines of graphs and charts. We live here and now, in our heads, a strange place in a strange place. As the historian and writer Yuval Noah Harari writes, we do not become satisfied by leading a peaceful and prosperous existence. Rather, we become satisfied when reality matches our expectations. The bad news is that as conditions improve, expectations balloon. We are each personally faced with the task of understanding, managing, and mitigating our expectations, our perceptions, hopes, and values. We cannot control the world or predict the future, but we can perhaps, on some level, control how much we try to. For each of us, there are also thin cotton strings that hold us up, and with each personal choice and habit, we contribute to the cutting or adding of these strings. Every time we avoid some amount of social media, every time we choose to disengage from some amount of the news, Every time we choose to engage more with our partners, our friends, our families, our communities. Every time we choose to create art and exercise the body. Every time we choose some form of hope and openness over certain forms of cynicism and clinging to control. Every time we choose compassion over bitterness, we retain and add more strings. This is not to say that concerning ourselves with our future, both personal and collective, or that striving to control and improve areas of life and society wherever we can, or that enjoying the pleasures of modern technology, or that being realistic and sometimes cynical are bad, but rather, concerning ourselves too much with these things often is. As Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "He who fights with monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster himself. And if you gaze into the abyss gazes into you also." We have work to do on a societal and global level, work to ensure that things get better for everyone and stay stable and around. But we also have work to do on an individual level, work to ensure that we stay stable and around. Optimism and hope are not universal philosophies. They are weapons and tools that we can sharpen and use when appropriate and when needed. Real generosity towards the future lies in giving all to the present, wrote Albert Camus. We have never ventured out this far. The landscape is precarious and unknown, but we have prepared the best we can, and we brought all our best gear. We have survived everything up until now, individually and collectively. That doesn't mean we will survive everything, or that everything will be good, but it does mean that we and things can. The fears and prophecies, the doomsdays and apocalypses, the gods and myths, the storms and wars, we have outsmarted and survived it all, not without fear, but in spite of it. Not without risk, but in the face of it. Of course, much has been lost in the process. It has not all been and is not without destruction and bloodshed, but we have also reduced the destruction and bloodshed in the process. We are always on the brink, one person and one choice away from the final string being cut. But it hasn't been cut yet, and we are constantly hanging more. Things are precarious, humans are deeply ignorant and often awful, but things are also unfathomably interesting and exciting, and humans are often brilliant and kind. Perhaps the best reason to continue is merely to see what happens, to be surprised, to find out how wrong our predictions were, and maybe, just maybe, how right our hopes and efforts were. In the words of Harari, each and every one of us has been born into a given historical reality, ruled by particular norms and values, and managed by a unique economic and political system. We take this reality for granted, thinking it is natural, inevitable, and immutable. We forget that our world was created by an accidental chain of events, and that history shaped not only our technology, politics, and society, but also our thoughts, fears, and dreams. The cold hand of the past emerges from the grave of our ancestors, grips us by the neck, and directs our gaze towards a single future. We have felt that grip from the moment we were born, so we assume that it is a natural and inescapable part of who we are. Therefore, we seldom try to shake ourselves free and envision alternative futures. This is the best reason to learn history, not in order to predict the future, but to free yourself of the past and imagine alternative destinies. Whether we want to participate in the future through social organization, education, business, philanthropy, entertainment, or whatever else, having a professional, fully functioning website and the tools to manage it is crucial. Thanks to this video sponsor, Odoo, building and managing a website and business to carry out whatever your goals and visions are in the world is now easier than ever, just a few clicks and minutes away. For example, if you wanted to start a blog or educational website that explores something like the intersection of technology and culture, all you need to do is fill out a few prompts about the topic, choose the color palette you like, determine the features you want, pick the right theme, and then it's a simple drag and drop, plug and play process until you have exactly what you want. It's quick, easy, and requires no background knowledge on website building, coding, or software management. The results are a beautiful, modern, and professional website in minutes for free. Odoo is not only offering this first app you use for free for life, but also unlimited hosting and support, as well as the first year of your domain name for free. And with fully integrated apps for e-commerce, accounting, inventory management, assisting with project goals, and much more, Odoo has essentially everything you'll ever need, all in one place. Odoo lets you focus on the creativity, the innovation, and the quality of your work, while it ensures everything you do is showcased and run smoothly, professionally, and efficiently. Get started on your vision or project today for free using my link in the description. And of course, as always, thank you so much for watching in general, and see you next video.